So you should be able to see me and my wonderful guests for today's No Code Lab session. So just to make sure you know you're at the right event, so this is Bridging the Digital Skills Gap, my No Code Lab. We're here to talk about the challenge around the digital skills pipeline that I think most of us that are in the digital sector will be experiencing right now, and ways in which no code can enable that acceleration of that pipeline. For those of you that are not in the digital economy, then you're going to hear some amazingly inspirational stories from people that have come into this sector in recent years and have found a pathway into that and a career for themselves in the digital space. So whether you're here to find out how to plug the skills gap in your own organisation, or you're here to be inspired about how to enter this this rapidly growing part of the economy, then you're going to hear about that today. So quick introductions about who we've got on the session today. So firstly, a massive thank you to British Business Bank. Mel Elliard is the senior manager at the Yorkshire Humber and Tees Valley part of British Business Bank, and also involved in the Include Me Diversity and Inclusion Group. So thank you for sponsoring today, Melanie, and welcome. We've also got Joanna Waite, who is a project manager at Tech Up Initiative, hosted and led by Durham University's Computer Science Department. Tech Up is a flagship programme that takes over 100 women from minority groups living across North and the Midlands through a 6-month online training programme. Forgive me, I'm reading off the screen to my left as you see me look to one side. It's been developed closely with 18 university partners and three university partners, I think. The programme covers a range of tech topics such as coding, artificial intelligence, cloud computing and soft skills. So really interested to hear about their approaching this subject. So welcome, Joanna. Also to welcome Jen Calland. Jen is an alumni from one of the Tech Up programmes. In fact, one of the first 100 women, and is a data analyst working for CTS. So welcome, Jen. Really look forward to hearing your stories about embarking on this new journey into the digital sector. And Francis, last but not least of our panellists, Francis is a Notion consultant from the Notion Bar and is a no-code builder, enables organisations to create no-code solutions using the Notion platform, and she'll tell us about her journey as well. So thank you very much. Georgia and myself are the co-founders of No Code Lab. I'm also the CEO of Panellists, a data analytics software developer here in Leeds. And Georgia, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself? She's not feeling 100% today, so you'll hear how croaky she is, I'm afraid. So over to you, Georgia.
Thanks, Sandra. I'm Georgia Halston. I'm co-founder of No Code Lab and founder of Halston Marketing, a B2B agency in Leeds. Really looking forward to this event. I think that when we worked out the values and the pillars that really held what we thought No Code Lab was meant to represent, the digital skills gap was actually number 1, and diversity inclusion was number 2. So I think that this event really represents the reason that we even put this whole thing together in the first place. So I'm really excited to hear from the amazing people that we have on the panel today. Might not be saying too much myself, which is a bit of a change from usual. So hand it over to our guests instead.
Thanks, Georgia. This is being recorded, so we'll be able to share this and circulate this through the community afterwards. But before we get started on speaking with the panel today, because they're definitely going to have a lot to say about the subject, a few bits of information and data. So No Code Lab was born out of a passion really for enabling digital innovation to thrive in our local economy here in Yorkshire. And it's now become a bit of an international mission of ours, and we have members from all over the world that participate in this agenda, which is amazing. But it started out as a shared passion for Georgia and myself to identify ways in which no code technology could enable us to do a number of different things, to accelerate innovation in our regional economy, enable more diversity of skills pipeline into digital, to make sure that we are building innovative solutions that are built for the many and not for the few by the many. And lastly, to ensure that we are reaching into those projects that do not get the funding and attention that are usually served because of a lack of diversity in that digital pipeline. So reaching in, using no code to innovate in areas that perhaps have not seen digital innovation because it doesn't require the same capital investment. So it's a really interesting agenda. Today, we're focusing on the skills gap and how no code can enable the current and immediate challenge. Just a few quotes to get us started today. This is a quote from TB Tech. It's an article about low code, no code, and could it be the answer to bridging the digital skills gap? We might drop it in the chat if you want to read this later, but just to bring this out. Amid a challenging economic climate in which businesses are already suffering from increased pandemic-related talent shortages, the need to address the digital skills gap remains an immediate priority. If not addressed, the gap will continue to widen quickly, which is hugely problematic for the 60% of businesses that believe their reliance on specialist digital skills is only set to increase in the next 5 years. It's true, the skills gap will be an ever-present challenge. This is due to the simple fact that technology is constantly evolving, with many businesses hurrying through their digital transformations due to the pandemic. There are vacancies for over 1 million digital experts, and with 35% of our workers lacking digital skills, the need for a highly skilled talent pipeline is reaching a never seen before peak. And it's not just about the lack of pipeline, it is about diversity. And again, in the information age, in their article, No Code Software's most effective path to closing this digital skills gap, it said that the tech sector has long been governed by a certain subset of society and has lacked diversity. According to Diversity in Tech, 15% of the tech workforce are from BAME backgrounds, and gender diversity is now at 19%, compared to 49% for all of the jobs in the UK. Considering the tech industry is growing almost 3 times faster than the UK economy, tech and software development is a lucratively paid and in-demand industry for these skills. However, there is no doubt it's exclusionary. So an interesting topic, and one that I've got an incredibly diverse panel, or maybe not. It's lots of women today. So lacking in diversity in one regard, but actually representing that there is a huge amount of women in the digital sector that have a voice on this subject. So let's start, Mel, with you. I know that you have been keen as the British Business Bank leans into this conversation. I wondered if you just wanted to start out by sort of the British Business Bank sort of view on this and some of the things that you're currently working on.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area, and I think, you know, you've put out some great statistics there. I know we've got some representatives from Leeds City region specifically on that might want to, you know, contribute further, but it's a massive problem, and obviously the bank's interest is in supporting SMEs in their access to finance, which means, you know, looking at and touching on and working with intermediaries that look after business skills, talent, all these sorts of areas. So I'm fascinated by it. By no means am I an expert in no code in this whole area, but I'm really interested to kind of engage, be in touch, be educated, and look at what's happening in our region. For me, kind of looking at some of the instruments that we've got out there, the bank partners with 180 plus different partners who are all trying to support businesses from different areas in terms of access to finance. So a whole myriad, if you like, collage of financial supporters out there, from organisations that are supporting really early stage businesses and entrepreneurs. I think we've spoken in the past, Sandra, about things like, you know, the startup loan company, and I find again this fascinating. How does it fit with this discussion? You know, that they've lent, I think, since it's been in existence, the startup loan company, probably nearly 4.5 million in loans to entrepreneurs. These are people that are starting out their careers from all sorts of different areas. You know, the stats are really interesting. You know, 18 to 24-year-olds, that represents a 7% of all those loans that are going out there. You know, the 25 to 30-year-olds, the 31 to 49-year-olds are probably the biggest category there, and then the 50 pluses. So who are these people? What are their skills? What are they wanting to do? What's really nice about Startup Loan, again, is there's a nice diversity split. I think it's about 45% women to 55% males. So really nice split in terms of who this funding is going out to. These are people that are starting their own businesses that would have been unemployed. 9% are saying they'd be unemployed had they not got this funding. So again, you know, where are their skills? How can we support these more? You know, I know that I think we've got Mercia, one of the Northern Powerhouse investment funds. So as we go through this conversation, I'm really interested to understand what they know about no code and how they think it can be supported, and what appetite they've got as investors in this area. So there's a lot there, Sandra.
No, it's great, and I do think, you know, we've got Frances, who started her own business, on the call, and I know Joanna has been supporting a whole range of people to kind of retrain into a new area. So it'd be great to get, you know, their perspective, and I can see Jen nodding as well, as to what do the investment community and the finance community need to do to enable those retrainees or people that are moving into this to be able to make a choice between employment and perhaps self-employment and starting their own business. Maybe we should start on that subject, Mal, if that's good for you, just thinking about how no code's given them that opportunity. Frances, you've started your own business. Tell us about that journey, and what do you think you'd have needed to help you from a finance point of view, or what support were you given? Who did you speak to?
Yeah, so I definitely have a bootstrapping background. My business is completely bootstrapped, and I think community is more important than anything. So if organizations can provide communities of founders who are all kind of at the same stage, or maybe just a few steps ahead, that's really, really important for anyone who's choosing to perhaps go down a self-employment route. So I learned a lot from people in the wider Notion community and how they have managed their journey, and they were so kind enough to kind of pass their knowledge down to me, which helped me get going in my own business. And I'm actually part of a business group called like Babes on Waves, and getting all of the advice and support from them was also really helpful to me, and like which gave me the confidence to kind of go forward in my self-employment journey. So I think sometimes it is funding, but maybe sometimes it's, more importantly, it's actually community. So if people are able to kind of like fund the day-to-day management of communities, you know, like people like employ community managers to set them up and manage membership and things like that, I think more than anything, that is what founders need, just people to ask questions, essentially.
Thanks, Frances. And I would love for you to share your story as well, because what made you kind of go on this no-code journey? Where were you before, and what was that kind of moment of inspiration?
Totally. So before becoming a certified Notion consultant, I have a project management and like operational background in creative agencies and event management. And so I had a lot of systems know-how and kind of what it takes to run processes efficiently and manage, and like essentially what teams need to get the job done. And so I kind of had all of this knowledge. And then at the same time, I used to work for a UX agency, so I had a lot of know-how of how to like make good digital interfaces that look good and actually work. And on top of that, I happen to really be good at building database systems, and I really latched onto the functionality of Notion as a no-code tool. So it's kind of it was a logical step for me in that I could combine all of the industry knowledge I had across, like, in terms of like project management across several verticals, along with like the creativity of creating like good digital experiences and this technical know-how of Notion, essentially. And so I could bring all of those three things together to kind of create really cool digital solutions for businesses and people. And it was just, the demand was there. And as Notion blew, it kind of made sense for me to quit my day job, which was at a Shopify agency. Shopify is technically no code, to kind of pursue this more, as it was just seemed like it was a really exciting industry to dive into, essentially. So yeah.
And a massively brave choice as well, by the way, Frances. You know, that is a huge move to take on your own. So, and you're working with different customers now. You're building up some clients and a business at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I work from everyone, so like mums looking to manage their grocery lists, to fully fledged like startups who, or not yet fully fledged startups because they don't have an internal system. So I build them one essentially, to help like manage their day-to-day business processes. And another point which I added, which I forgot to mention, is that I was inspired to kind of create a brand and put myself out there purely because I saw the lack of diversity in the Notion space. And it's one of the most inspiring things is that I've seen lots of like women of color and like non-binary people of color especially like fill my DMs and messages like, thank you for putting yourself out there. Like, now I see that you can do it. It's really inspired me to use Notion more, or actually even like become start Notion consulting myself. So yeah, role models, community, super important.
Couldn't agree more, Frances, and it's really well made, brilliant point, well made. And if it's okay, Frances, I'd like to just come on to Jen, because obviously you've taken a slightly different path, Jen, that you've gone to work for CTS after, but tell us about your story. What made you sort of go into this area? And again, back to Mel's point, would funding or accessibility funding made a different choice to you? How would that have worked?
Well, basically, a long time ago in a different country, I was a business analyst for another multi-global corporation, a little place called Siemens. And I basically, a lot of what Frances was talking about as far as like taking process-driven, I guess, processes that are unwieldy and everything, and trying to find digital solutions for those to automate a big portion of it and identify the key processes from which business decision making could be better done and everything, as far as like their journey into digital back in 2000. So at any rate, later on I became a mom and had to take a maternity break. That maternity break ended up being a little bit longer than I anticipated because one of my children was diagnosed with autism and the other child was diagnosed with childhood cancer. And she's gotten through treatment. Both children are thriving and doing wonderfully today. But I wanted to get a career back in tech. And so my first stop was kind of like a local skills boot camp through St. Helens Chamber, and they were the ones who got me in touch with Tech Up Women, where I applied and retrained into tech and succeeded in graduating from their software development path. And later on went to another boot camp, and then who connected me with CTS and got me hired there. But I'm also really struck by what Frances had to say about the community, around Tech Up Women and stuff. I mean, I've got 100 women who I met along that learning journey, and we've kept in touch. We keep supporting each other through, new initiatives, changes that we make, in our careers and our lives, just as friends, and just having, 99 other cheerleaders behind me, or even 99 people to sanity check me. It's been really, really helpful in maintaining resilience and confidence through all these changes. Pandemic, for instance, I mean, that's huge on its own. So yeah, I mean, you know, to once again bounce off of what Francis was saying, as far as like whenever businesses are entering into, you know, their digital transition, it often just takes, you know, you don't need to hire a data scientist straight away to identify, okay, this is the process, you know, that drives this decision making, and how do we make it faster? How do we make it more automated? How do we turn that from, you know, a salesman's gut hunch to something that's actually data driven? Those first few steps, you know, can take just who you have, you know, on the floor now, exposing them to, you know, some free courses online, you know, maybe how to use spreadsheets better, maybe how to, you know, automate forms and things like that, just to get you guys going on that digital journey. You know, you don't need to have like a high-end data analyst specialist, you know, to come in and do that good work. So that's all I've got on that. Thank you.
Sorry, I mute myself, doing the classic task of speaking whilst muted. Jenna, that was brilliant. And I think there is a tipping point at which people decide to kind of change path and retrain, and it can be life factors. And it sounds like there is some important life factors for you, Jen, but sometimes there's a range of different reasons why people kind of go, actually, I'm ready for that change. And Joanna, you're speaking and meeting with these all of the time, and I'm fascinated really as to what you see as to, you know, if we're thinking that maybe community is an enabling factor, that maybe, you know, no code, which is an easier entry point, could be, what are the things that you see are the trigger points for that kind of change of pathway?
They are huge and varied. I mean, of the hundreds of people that we've trained, I couldn't narrow down those triggers, but you know, there are a huge amount that have gone through, you know, similar journeys to Jen, where they've had to take extended career breaks and are trying to get back into tech. So some have already been in tech and have had that break and are trying to refresh their skills and get back into tech. Some of the learners that we've had on our programs have had no exposure to tech at all, but they are tech curious, or they, you know, they've self-taught for a while and they want to formalize that, or, you know, they just don't know where to start. There is a huge amount of tech training available on the market. You know, now that we have all these various different training platforms, you know, if you Google a coding course to give it a go, you're faced with a massive list of results, and it's just, it's impossible to know where to start in order to gather all those different skills that you need in order to make it through to that end goal of getting a job, you know, if you're not going down the traditional degree path. So that was one of the things that we tried to do, was to pull those resources together and give our learners a defined pathway into work. But where they came from, it was massive. We had teachers, we had doctors, we had people coming from theology backgrounds. They're from all over the place, and that community does make a massive difference. And it's one of the founding principles of how we designed Tech Up, is that we would create that community. We were very lucky that with Tech Up Women, it was pre-COVID and we were able to meet in person. So we had 4 residential weekends. And when you're working with people that come from underserved backgrounds, where often as an individual you feel alone and isolated, you feel like you're the only woman trying to get into tech, or you feel like you're the only person of color trying to break into this career. But actually, when we brought all of those people together, we had 100 women, all from different minority groups. We had women with disabilities, women of colour, LGBTQ+, and women with dependents. And we brought them all together, and they all walked into this room at our first residential weekend at Durham University and realised that they weren't alone. There were 99 other women that were going through a similar journey. And that has really helped them bond and create this community that still supports each other now.
So there's loads of courses, there's better ways of kind of engaging people, but there still seems to be this gap. What do you think that gap's about, Joanna, beyond availability of training?
I think it's about demystifying it. I think so many people feel intimidated by tech, because you know, for a long time it's been a very specialist subject and a very specialist career, that you had to go to university to learn. You had to get a degree at the very least to get in there, and it's kind of, you know, communicating and advertising to people that actually you don't need to take that route, that there are ways you can work in the tech sector without actually having tech skills. I work in the tech sector, but I have zero tech skills. I'm a project manager. You know, I've never coded in my life, and I use no-code solutions to deliver my tech training programs. So it's demystifying the tech space and enabling people to realize that they can work in that space even if they don't have those very specific technical skills. There's more to it than that.
That's a really good point, Joanna. And I know we were talking just before this started about, you know, all the different pathways and routes into digital, actually different jobs there are in digital that aren't technical. Jen, you were talking about your organisation. Do you want to share a bit more about your experience of that?
Well, actually, I just wanted to ping more off of what Joanna was saying as far as, like, you know, some of the barriers to finding out how to, when you've got a non-traditional background, actually, you know, getting into the training and knowing what pathway to take and that sort of thing. And there's so much to networking. And if you're not inside of the tech bubble, if you will, you're not going to see any of it. And so it's kind of like that outreach, you know, to folks who may be, you know, in, you know, towns that are deprived, where, you know, nobody would actually think of looking for great tech talent. They're out there. They just don't know how to get in. And so I want to say, you know, there needs to be, you know, some amount of outreach there, but it's kind of like a lot of organizations have been trying to do that outreach, still don't seem to be reaching people. And I don't have the right solution for that either, other than to say that I was extremely fortunate that I just happened to be on this other skills boot camp when the Tech Up Women opportunity more or less landed in my lap. You know, I don't think I would have ever heard of it if I hadn't already been kind of in some sort of career circle type thing. So maybe it's career circles type, you know, networking and that sort of thing, where, you know, more information needs to filter down to, you know, say, you know, we've got these great jobs that are not terribly technical. You just need to be smart, be logical, notice differences, and want to learn, and, you know, be all about continuous change, and getting those folks, you know, on board for that. So
thanks, Jen. I just wondered if anybody else, do just chip in as we go, and feel free to sort of join the conversation. I'm conscious. Go for it, Francis. Yeah.
Yeah, I really resonate a lot with what you said there, Jen. Like, the talent is out there, and I actually don't like talking about like those like hidden groups as like underrepresented. I like talking about them as like underexposed. And yeah, people have, like, you know, your traditionals have tried to like reach out into these communities, but a lot of the time the reason why these programs aren't successful is because the methods in which they're doing it aren't relatable. So people can't like latch onto them because they don't recognize like the way in which it's being sold to them. It's not in their language. It's not in like the aesthetics that they normally use every day. And so like there are some organizations out there who are doing a good job, and I'd say like specifically for the Black community in the UK, like companies like Hustle Crew or like Pocket, so like people in color in tech, like they're sharing the memes and the GIFs, but they're like relating it back to the tech content, and that way the community is latching onto it because it's something that they like recognize essentially. So I think if you are like sort of a traditional organization, you are trying to do these outreach programs, you first need to like hire people within those communities to like lead those programs, because they're going to know what resonates with whoever you're trying to reach, essentially.
Yeah, that's
Mel, I was just about to say to you, I think that there's amazing examples that you can talk about with your own initiative, Include Me. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I was just going to
go into that.
Yeah, thank you, Georgia, so much. As you know, as the conversation was going, a few things were kind of resonating. You know, these traditional organisations. Well, you know, I've got my British Business Bank hat on today, and Frances quite rightly points out, we refer to some of the communities that we try and reach with funding and support and introductions of other intermediaries as underrepresented, and I like that underexposed you know, phrasing. It's a challenge, and it is a challenge for traditional organisations for all the reasons that have been cited. The way the British Business Bank will reach out to those communities is typically through intermediaries. Yeah, I'm building new contacts all the time. If I don't have that into that Black female community or Black male community or whatever it is, then it's very hard to get messages and support out there. And that is one of the reasons why I'm a big supporter of Include Me. And that initiative is all about supporting hard to reach entrepreneurs who are looking to start a business, grow a business through community. It's a community platform, essentially. It doesn't have any kind of agenda. It's not for profit. And a lot of what we're trying to do is amplify the great work that's going on out there, because otherwise, you know, there's, you know, and I look after just alone Yorkshire, Humber and Tees Valley. I've got contacts in all sorts of different places, and some of it for me is about it's sharing that best practice. And we had a meeting a couple of months ago now where, yeah, I purposely pulled in some, and there did happen to be a lot of females, which is actually quite nice to be saying, but pulled them together because of the work that they're doing and the network that they have sat beside them. And I knew as soon as they collided, you know, sparks would fly and more good conversations would start to happen. But it is a challenge. And it sounds ridiculous to be saying that, particularly when we're talking about tech, which should be open and accessible to everybody. But, you know, in preparation for this, I was doing some reading, and again, a lot of my reading has been centralised around sort of Leeds City region. You know, 21% of households don't have internet. You know, having students that don't actually have access to laptops or computers at home is a big problem. And again, I know that there's some really great initiatives that you can probably talk to, Sandra or Georgia, that are going on at the moment to try and support and help with all of that. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things that you know need to be addressed. But, you know, Include Me is specifically about connecting. Well, first of all, actually, it's about listening. What are the problems? If we can get out to those communities, what's going on? What are the challenges? What do we need to address? Then through our network, and there's a really powerful collection of people that are passionate about supporting, you know, the North in this movement. So they'll open up their books and connect people together. So, you know, I think that is a big part of it. I'd agree with what's been said previously. Community and networks are vital in this area.
I think there's a bit of a difference. There's always going to have been a divide between the rural and the and the city living, and the lack of high-speed internet out in rural areas. And right now, there's millions of thousands of households that right now don't have internet because of the storms and things like that, and because they're quite hard to reach. And those really are the people that are being left behind with tech movements. I know I was speaking to Elena, one of your colleagues, Joanna, and she you know, she was talking about the fact that there are people who she's met that, yeah, they've got a phone, they've got a tablet even maybe, but they've never even used a mouse. and it's because they've never had a computer. Why would they know how to use other things in that way? And you know, what I said to her was the kind of backgrounds that she's talking about, there's a great affinity that I have for that, because I'm from a really rural background where there was about, you know, 200 people or so in a village, and it was a long time until we had the internet. And there's a whole people, you know, a whole swathe of people who are my age who I know for a fact will never have used a laptop, and I'm 35. They've never will, and they'll only have their devices. And I think that massive disconnection from technology in general, not just to do with the internet, but to do with the availability of devices, as Mel was saying, is a huge part of that. Again, you know, I don't have the answers either, but I think that just the at least for us saying, you know, technology isn't just about code. Hopefully there will be some barriers that we're able to bring down in terms of a discussion.
And I think it's really important that we're not just talking about the employable generation right now, that we are reaching into the pipeline. And we talk about pipeline, it is the schools, and it is, you know, back to Francis' point about being a role model and being visible, not just in the current kind of community of people that could be that pipeline demand, but actually making sure we're getting into the education system. Digital Action West Yorkshire is probably worth calling out, Mel. You said sort of flag something that we might know. Hyde Park Book Club, if anybody's ever driven to that student part of Leeds, has facilitated the ability for businesses like ours, Pan Intelligence, to contribute tech that we're not using, so old laptops that are not powerful enough for our usage as a developer, but are more than adequate for a student in a school to use for doing their homework, and getting those actually stripped back down and rebuilt ready for those students. And we were able to participate in that in lockdown to get laptops into the hands of students that weren't able to do remote learning because they didn't have a laptop at home. And, you know, maybe those young people have been given access to a laptop for the first time, have actually been given not just an opportunity to learn, but maybe an opportunity to get onto a digital career because they've now got a device that they can do more than just their studies on. So, you know, there are small things that we can do as individuals, as businesses, and as organisations, and there are lots and lots and lots of community projects, initiatives in every city of this country doing just that. And I think it's up to us to find those things and also share those as well. Really important. I'm just going to bring us a little bit back to no code for a second, if that's okay. And Jen is just attending to her family, so just bear with us a minute, she'll be back shortly. And I love the fact that we can do that in this format, right? That we can be present and be on an event, but we can also be there for the people that we need. I think that's such a powerful message. So thanks, Jen, for role modelling that for us. I just want to make this statement. This is again from another article. The nature of no-code software enables individuals without prior technical knowledge to write their own applications. This bridges a divide, allowing the fundamentals of system design to be gently introduced to learners in a simple format. With tech barriers removed, individuals can focus on creating roadmaps, system structures, and other aspects of software, such as compliance and security. This encourages more role models into tech, shortens the knowledge process, opens up new pathways into the sector, but more importantly, as tech skills grow outside the UK, outside the IT department, should I say, employees can upskill in their current roles, benefiting from pay rises without actually having to switch companies. And Jen, you know, you talked about Siemens and sort of leaving Siemens and sort of retraining and coming back in. I do wonder how important it is for employers to be looking at no code as an introduction to enable people in organisations to have an opportunity to experience no code technology or experience kind of building digital solutions to problem, to maybe give themselves an alternative, you know, pathway in an organisation, because I think there's an opportunity there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, especially for folks who are returning after a career break and things like that, they've not been sitting idle while they've been on their break. They've been out, they've been volunteering, they've been organizing, you know, in my case, you know, my children's lives, my children's lives, my children's complex health needs, navigating other systems, you know, that sort of thing. So you might also consider, you know, some of those skills that are not technical, but when like navigating, you know, complex systems, having to talk to several different people, you know, you've got your client, your kids to please, that sort of thing, and juggling all of that all together. I mean, you've got a great candidate potentially if they're willing, you know, to learn something else or, you know, upskill just a bit to meet the business needs. You know, it's a winning combination there.
Yeah, definitely, Jen. And I wonder, Joanna, I don't know that no code at the moment really forms part of your curriculum, so to speak, but are you seeing the pickup of no code as being something that your learners are moving into? I mean, I don't know, are you seeing people starting to work with those technologies?
I think Joanna's
I'm seeing in applications that people have used no code and that's piqued their curiosity, and therefore they're wanting to take that next step, and therefore have come looking for training programs like Tech Up. So I would see that no code as the route in, and I'd love to explore that more in order to get more learners onto our training programs. We do cover some no code solutions as part of our curriculum, you know, where we want to touch on a topic, but we just don't have the hours available to do it in depth. We often cover it using a no-code solution. And that just helps, gives them that taster and whet that appetite, and that hopefully then they will move on and pursue that topic in more detail, you know, after they've completed the program. So we do try and do that. And I deliver through a no-code solution. So, you know, that helps me deliver my training material in a much more efficient way, without having to have a technical team behind me to program in all the learning materials.
Oh, sorry, Joanna, I'm missing the mark. Oh no, but no, it's great. I mean, I didn't realise that you were actually including it in your programme. That's amazing, because I think from my point of view, there is often a gap sometimes between the education system and sometimes, and obviously you guys are ahead, which is brilliant, but sometimes there is a gap, isn't there, between what's coming out of the education and what's actually needed in the market. And I know DCMS did a report, UK Data Skills Gap report, and it was between 16 and 20% gap between the skills coming out of universities and actually what employers need. It's so lovely to hear Durham's already ahead of the curve with no code in their curriculum. So that's awesome.
That's also why we work quite closely with industry, because we were getting the same feedback, is that learners were coming out of university, but they didn't have the hands-on skills. They were full of theory, and, you know, very valuable theory, but they didn't have the hands-on skills. So then they were having to be familiarized with systems and processes once they started their new roles. So our aim is to work with industry, and they inform our curriculum. So our curriculum is revised every program in consultation with the industry partners that we're working with on that particular program, and they tell us what languages they want to teach, what systems they want them to be familiar with, and we revise our curriculum so that they get those hands-on skills. And if an employer requests a particular no-code system because they use that, then we can integrate that into our curriculum.
I think, Sandra, as well, there's the bit of education that we need to do as leaders in the no-code movement, is to educate the private sector as well, because I feel like there's a bit of disparity. I know that we've looked at a lot of those stats, and there's things like, oh, you know, there's people within this certain industry think that there's a 20% gap between what they need and who's applying for those roles. But actually, can we not educate them to say, do you really think that you need another 20 data scientists? Or do you think that actually people can be using these tools, and actually you don't necessarily just need to be looking at the universities, you need to be looking elsewhere, and there's far more people that can fill those gaps, because you think that you've been told by your IT department that you need another 10 devs. Maybe you don't need those things. Maybe there's alternative routes, and we can bring people like Frances in to be like, I could have done that in 10 minutes, and you're bringing in, you know, devs on 50 grand a year, you know, writing all that code. So I think that maybe there's the education element to both, you know, the types of skills that we're developing, and also the types of skills that employers think that they actually need, and things, and actually they may not need what they think they do, and the gap may actually be more of a mirage than we actually see in the numbers.
I think that's a brilliant point. Go on, Jen, sorry.
I've got two things I want to springboard off of the conversation there. First off, I wanted to tell a quick story about a no-code solution that we use at CTS, even though we work in bleeding edge, cloud technologies and that sort of thing. At the start of pandemic, one of our, he's our hardware IT guy. Okay, so he doesn't code, but he knows a lot about hardware. And when pandemic started, and we're trying to figure out how to organize ourselves and that sort of thing, he actually came up with a hot desking solution using no code in less than 2 weeks, which probably we could have had one of our high-end senior engineers put something together. But no, he was able to cobble something that works really well that we're still using now, and it's all in no code. So even that's to say that even some of the most technologically advanced cutting edge companies are using no code solutions to manage very important internal processes, such as signing hot desks during COVID. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to comment on was what Joanna had said about, some of the graduate students who come out with all this theory, but without practical hands-on anything. When I went to start work with CTS, I was actually onboarded along with their grad scheme. So it was kind of like, you had these, fresh-eyed university kids, if you will, and then me. And so, and actually that made our onboarding process and, integration into the company a little bit more interesting than what they had in past cohorts, because in past cohorts, it was just pure grad, and they kind of, learn about corporate life and how to address customers and just all these other, larger important skills that are important in tech. I was having to teach these kids, how to do that, which was often, and it's stuff like, speaking truth to power, having the confidence to say, here's what I think is going on, and here's what it is, and here's my solution, and standing by that. And especially when talking to, decision makers and everything, that's difficult to do. And that's not at all technology based, that's still the people component there, which I think, shouldn't be ignored in looking at, all these other areas and things that are involved in the no code and, digital skills filling of that gap, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, completely, Jen. And I was writing down soft skills is the digital opportunity. It's the value add on top of the strength of those soft skills that people already have, right? So soft skills are a lot harder to build and can take longer and rely on a lot more experience, but perhaps the digital skills can be enabled much faster and laid on top of that. But I think it's the point you're sort of making here really, is that we sometimes undervalue the contribution of soft skills to the digital. Yeah, sorry.
Well, when building the whole skill set and everything all together and everything, you can leverage one against the other. Okay, that client correspondence didn't go great, but I learned from that. And really, in tech, and you've probably heard about the whole fail fast and all that, which is terrifying. But in order to rebuild yourself, to have the confidence to take on solutions that are, because I guess what they have in common really is that it's putting yourself out there outside of your comfort zone either way. And so if you kind of get comfortable with being in that space in the first place, then it's much easier to tackle bigger problems and kind of push yourself towards learning more and improving everything around you.
Can I ask a question? Well, I think I've probably got about 3 questions, but I'll try not to hog the conversation. And it might take us in a slightly different direction. But the first, as everybody's talking again, I'm kind of reflecting, and something that you mentioned earlier, which is, again, we've got a massive problem now. So one of my probably quite naive questions is, no code, how can no code experts, how can people that aren't expert in no code already get ready to fill the gaps that we have right now? Because you're right, you know, there's one spectrum over here, which is we need role models. We need to be ensuring that the younger generations, as we've all said already, are engaging, are considering, are you know, taking tech careers very, very seriously, and knowing that tech careers are for all. But then we've got this immediate problem. So I'm wondering, what can no code do practically to help support and address that problem right now? So that's kind of part one of my question. An extension of that, I suppose, is, you know, over the last couple of years, the last couple of years have not been normal. We all know the reasons why, but we have seen some incredible companies from all sorts of sectors pivot, and some of them have been from that kind of soft digital skill base that you're talking about, to technical companies that they've already almost got that mindset, so they've been able to pivot. And I'm kind of wondering again, what part has no code played in that? I don't know the answer to that. And what part could it have played to help more businesses survive and help more businesses right now, you know, small businesses? So again, there's quite a lot there, so I'll throw it over to you guys.
No, which is brilliant, and we'll definitely, you know, ask the panel as well, especially Francis, because she's sort of coming up against those solving problems in her business. But just for me to summarize what I think, what can no code do right now? We are still educating organizations that this is a faster alternative to digital innovation than bringing in people. And there's part of why no code labs exist is to just educate our economy of people and organizations to understand there's an opportunity, a lower entry point and a gentler introduction into digital via no code. Explore it, innovate, have a go. It's great. It's a supportive community for the individual and for organizations. Don't assume you have to fix digital problems by bringing in people to build it. You can get there faster with no code plus some people time, and it's education. It's these kind of events. It's talking about it all the time. The technology's there. There is no code technology for every aspect of every problem you might want to solve, whether it's, you know, front end kind of form-based technologies for collecting data, through to technologies for analyzing and manipulating data, to back-end technologies for automating workflows, systems, processes. It exists, and people can pick these tools up and work with them very, very quickly. Francis, you're seeing all sorts of different problems that you're solving with no code. What are the sorts of conversations you have with organizations? Oh, the light bulb goes on. How do you see that kind of moment when people get it?
I think, like, obviously I can speak from like the Notion point of view. I think organizations realize, like what you just said there, how much quicker it is to essentially build out the solutions that they need. And not only that, the flexibility on the options they have to them down the line. So because they're building these things themselves, or they're hiring someone like me to build these things for them, it means that whatever they built is a lot more flexible in the long run. So instead of their process changing and them needing to switch to a whole different tool to accommodate that process, and anyone who's had to qualify tools before will know what a painful experience it is using no code solutions like Notion. They can just tweak the setup that they already have and like keep everyone on the same platform, essentially. So like speed and flexibility is like the main benefits, essentially, of employing no code. And what you were saying earlier about kind of having like 5 devs on like 50K a year, like on your team, which like broke a lot of businesses during the pandemic because they were like, oh my gosh, we have no money to like support you all. I think no code and code like live in harmony, and they actually help each other out. So let's say you're a business and like suddenly you can only afford like 80K worth of devs a year. Maybe you don't need 5 devs, but you can employ like 1 dev and like pay them more and have them working on like way more complex solutions, like way more important things. And you can employ someone else who's like a no code specialist to like run your everyday to-day solutions, which need to happen a lot quicker. So like the devs are getting paid more to work on more quote unquote complex slash I don't want to say important things, and like B, you're able to bring more people into the market who are like no coders, who get the things that need to be done quickly, more efficiently, essentially. So,
and these are the people that are almost a bit more operational, aren't they? Right? These are the people that maybe between the kind of technical and operational. So people can kind of move from an operational into a more technical domain without becoming a developer. They're sort of describing that kind of group of people in the middle that can sort of own the digital projects, digital innovation, make it happen fast without having to employ developers where there isn't a pipeline, and perhaps some of these people that we have right now. Go on, Jen, so we can say something.
Yeah, absolutely. What to springboard off of what Francis said, as far as like, you have like 1 dev and everything who's paid for taking all the data that's collected from these no code solutions and everything, and then building those data dashboards and that sort of thing, and how that becomes, kind of like an overall, less expensive but very effective way of doing business. Because especially if you're able to bring those people who are on the ground running those processes in the first place into no code, which a lot of that is actually just kind of drag and drop and add a tag to it, and you're done. and it runs, and then that data collection starts, but then it becomes the dev's job to bring all that information together to make something that is that can turn into that data-driven solution that so many stakeholders are reaching for. To add to that, though, also current businesses now, they could probably stand to allow their current employees who are in those operations, in those ops roles and that sort of thing, have a little bit of time to experiment, to sandbox, to get comfortable with thinking outside the box. Okay, what are my current tools now? I have no budget, but what can I do to make this better? And to promote, creativity. And that means, if somebody gets something wrong, no harm, no foul, that's a part of development. That's how you, grow towards faster solutions and everything, and giving people opportunities to experiment, to think creatively, to think about the tools that they have around them, and to improve what they're doing.
Yeah, so giving people the time to have innovation time in their role, right? So that they can go and explore these tools, give them permission for these things to sit outside of the IT department. I think we do see this a lot. So that's, there's a team, and they're the IT team or the technology team, and then everything else just sits outside that. But actually, digital businesses are now technology organizations. They are, most businesses have technology as a fundamental pillar that drives their success and their ability to compete, perform, innovate, thrive in whatever sector they're in. So digital transformation, the pandemic has accelerated that, but has it accelerated digital transformation into the organization for everyone to participate, or is it just grown the existing team, back to George's point? So I think this gap question is the right question to be asking. What is the real gap here? Is the gap actually the digital pipeline of people, or is the gap the leaders of organizations in seeing how their existing organization operations can lean into digital transformation by adopting a different approach through no-code technologies, because I think there's a gap in understanding about different ways to solve this problem, not actually just a gap in the digital skills pipeline, which is really the part of the conversation today. So my question then back to everyone would be, besides the no-code lab trying to be a voice into industry saying what's the real gap here, what can we do to bring no-code technology and the opportunity to life as a community? Because we've got Francis and Jen and others that are building these technologies and making them roles. What else could we be doing besides role modeling and telling the stories? How could we bridge that gap that we've talked about? I'll hand that over to you all. I don't know who wants to start. Joanna, do you want to start? You look like you're poised, ready over your mouse.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't poised.
Sorry.
I think it's still about communication and telling, making sure people know what no code is. And I mean, I'm sure that people use no code and don't even realize that that's what they're using, and therefore they don't realize that they're working in tech. Because they're using a piece of software they've been given, but they haven't made that connection that actually they're using a no-code solution, which means they are working in the tech space. So it's kind of opening that up and having people realize that they are doing it, they're already doing it, that rather than thinking they can't do it, it's like you're already doing it because you're using the system on a daily basis, and that is a no-code system. And if you can do that, you can take the next step and either, further your career in tech, or, you can help grow the no-code space, and, talk about it yourself. And, yeah, I think some people just don't know that that's what they're doing.
So redefine what we mean by digital roles.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah, go on, Mel.
It's hard, Sandra, because I can think of what can we do? What can the British Business Bank do? What can Include Me contribute to this conversation? What can we bring? Community network and access to, but it's Joanna's right. Getting that communication right. It's still very new. It's still very intangible to a lot of people. What does it mean practically? What does it mean for me? My brain's whirring. I'm kind of thinking there are a lot of SMEs that are struggling. There are a lot of SMEs that are looking for ways of saving money, becoming more efficient, getting in new products into new markets. And I'm also thinking about all these entrepreneurs. There's a very interesting question, I'll come back to it, on the chat, which I think Francis has started to answer, but and that's really interesting around not-for-profit organisations who are really behind on the tech front. What can no code do there? But it's getting the messages right, isn't it? Helping them understand. Have we got any good examples of what's happening? Francis is doing some great work there, but how do I get those examples out to the communities that I have access to, that I think need to at least understand and be educated on what this is in the first place? And then it's to entrepreneurs, and again, I really would love to understand. We come across entrepreneurs all the time. You come across, Georgia comes across entrepreneurs, we all do all the time. They've got these brilliant ideas, and a lot of them are in really worthwhile sectors. And their problem then is, I can visualize it, I know how to do it, I don't have any skills. They don't know how to reach out to Francis. They don't know about this movement even. What can be done there? So yes, as a community, there's support that I can pass your way, but what we're communicating.
So what's the bridge, right? And the No Code Lab is a facilitator, but there are some other bridges that could be physical. So community is a bridge, communication's a bridge, events like this are a bridge. But what are the other bridges? And I do believe that we're going to be running a hack at the end of March. So let's get the people. So we're going to get a group of nurses. Brilliant, building a no-code solution to a problem. Let's show how a group of nurses who don't use computers every day, that use their hands and their soft skills all day, every day, let's see them build a solution using no-code. those are the things that we need to be doing as a community, taking groups of people that would have never imagined in a million years they could have built a digital solution problem and show them they can, and if they can, anyone can type approach to the source. So I think, yes, let's bring some real world, let's show the world how easy this is, and we're leaning into that, and we're going to be doing that at the end of Q1. But ahead of that, there are some brilliant businesses. So I had somebody reach out to me, a guy called Adam, who couldn't make the call today and sent an apologies, and he's built, he's a finance person who's built a no-code platform. And, you know, he heard about the group through following a few people on LinkedIn that happened to share this event today. And he reached out and went, hey, you wouldn't happen to know some no-code developers, would you? And we've connected him with some no-code developers. So, you know, it's about that noise and conversation, but I think there are some practical things we can do. And we have a series called No Code Heroes, where, you know, every quarter we'll be showcasing somebody who is non-technical that has built a solution to a problem using no code and telling that story. But they're all just bridges. And I think, you know, it's as many voices as we can get in the conversation as possible, really.
Can I jump in?
Sorry, Joanna. Yeah, apologies. Yeah.
I just, in regards to resources for entrepreneurs, I think something as simple as a catalogue. Because I mean, we had this in one of our, I don't know if you were there, Jen, but I remember we had an alumni meet a while back where some of our alumni were talking about the projects they were working on, and other members of the alumni were able to say, well, if you use this no-code solution, you can bring your idea to market, you know, several months earlier, because all the hard work's done for you. You could literally input and have that running in a couple of weeks, and they were able to share resources like that, something as simple as a catalogue or a directory. Because some people, you know, that they're obviously focused on their project or the business that they're building, and they just don't know that a solution exists. They don't know, you know, it's easy to say, you know, you know, if you know what you're looking for, you can search for it. Yeah. But if you don't know what you're looking for, then you can't make, like, if you don't know what the question is, you're not going to be able to find the answer. So something as simple as a catalogue or a directory that lists the common resources that entrepreneurs often need, and then the different solutions that are available, then, you know, something like that in an entrepreneur's pack would give them a huge amount of things to choose from, to enable them to smooth up, to, you know, speed up that process, and you know, start integrating those solutions into their business.
Francis, have you seen anything like that? It's a brilliant idea, Joanna. It's absolutely so simple. Sometimes the simplest is the best, aren't they? But have you seen anything like that, guys? Sorry, Jen.
Yeah, I've seen several proofs of concept from a high end that has no code aspects to it. That's just, you know, we're in this hackathon, we're trying to come up with a proof of concept, you know, in the next 2 hours, just to show the customer what we can do. And a lot of that, you know, depends on no code in the first place, even though, you know, it's with the expectation that down the line, as, you know, the software is developed further, becomes a bit more bespoke.
Yeah, so it can be an MVP or a proof of concept. It can be initial build. It can prove that, is this the right solution to the problem? It doesn't always have to be the final solution, does it? It can be a real entry point into that kind of that solution. And Francis, have you seen lists of no code solutions? You're really in that community, aren't you?
Yeah, so there are a few kind of popping up here and then. There was one that launched on Product Hunt. I can't remember the name of it, but it was literally just a Notion database of like things that can help you make money or like run your business better, and it kind of like went viral because it was a super simple way to like share all of that information. And then there are quite a few like startup accelerator programs which do kind of target those underexposed communities, which a lot of the time the educational pieces will include like, here are some ways that you could do X, Y, and Z in your business, but through like no code. So it is, I think overall it is just that education piece, and like it's not going to happen overnight. So you've just got to kind of keep like pushing at it and like keep networking. I found that like Twitter is like a magical place. I'm sat here today because of Twitter. So to like reach out with people not only in your niche, but like other niches / adjacent niches, and then you become friends, and like then those like magical like sparks happen. Like that nurse example sounds so cool. And so yeah, just reach out to people you know and make magic happen, really.
Thanks, Frances. And I know that, like I say, this is evolving so fast. We started this network 12 months ago, and actually no one I knew was talking about no code. It just wasn't a conversation I ever came across. It wasn't in any of the papers, the digital strategy from the government. It wasn't in the data strategy from the government. It didn't feature in any paper I saw anywhere on a national or local stage. There was just no conversation about how can this be? This is going to be the biggest wave of disruption in our digital economy, you know, and maybe in our lifetime, but I believe this is going to hit us so fast that we don't actually know. I think people aren't realizing just how the pace of this, it's moving at a credible pace. So, you know, this is only 12 months ago, and now there seems to be conversations happening, you know, much more on a global stage, which is fantastic to see, because I think it has the power to transform, bring down the kind of entry level into the digital economy for everybody, whether that's a social, you know, whether that's a socio-economic background, because it's also about affording to enter the digital sector. Up until now has been a barrier, so it isn't just about you know, it isn't just about you can't be what you can't see, because I think role modeling, back to Frances's point, can be difficult. I actually also think there was a financial barrier to entry for people to participate. I think all of that is going to be reduced by no code. I'm conscious of where we are at the event, and we've talked about all sorts of different themes, and I just wanted to bring out some of the themes that have come up, and I'd just like to get maybe a few minutes from each of you, and just like to think as I play some of this back. Having sort of had the conversation today, what are the 2 or 3 things you will take away from today and sort of take into the conversations you're going to have in the next few months? What are the things? So the things that I've heard today is, you know, community is a massive enabler to bring people into the movement, that perhaps the gap is a mirage. I think that was George's point, that this is much about who can participate in digital innovation as opposed to the skills required, if that makes sense. So I think that there's a gap there. Role models matter, and visibility is key to education. No code is real, it's happening now. Back to Jen's point, MVPs, products are being built. Joanna's even using no code to run her courses, and they're featuring in it. Soft skills really matter, and actually you can build on top of soft skills faster than perhaps building soft skills on top of digital skills. Am I making sense? So you can build digital skills on top of soft skills faster than building soft skills on top of digital skills to drive and accelerate. We should be redefining tech and what it means to be in a tech role. What does it mean to be in a digital role? So there's something about, you know, changing the definition, because people still think tech is this thing over here, and we need to change the language. A catalogue for no code solutions so people know where to start. I think the point was, I don't know what I don't know, Joanna, was what you sort of said, really. How can you ask it? If you don't know what question to ask, how can you find the solution? And there are things happening like startup accelerators, there's hacks that we're doing and things going on. So there is actually just more needed. So those are some of the points that came out today. Is there any point that I haven't raised there that anybody wants to just reaffirm before we sort of get a final comment from all our panellists today?
Again, Sandra, I guess because of our role within the business bank, I'm really kind of starting to hone into some of the, we look for, we're talking to areas, we're looking at intelligence, other gaps, other issues. I know across my patch, supporting those early innovators at those early stage organisations, often there's very little public or private sector funding to support proof of concept, and particularly when you look at that tech space. And you know, you've got things like the REAP program in Leeds, which I know you've had some involvement with, and effectively that's creating a gap, because you're talking to really interesting early stage companies that would benefit, I think, from what you're talking about. but it's getting that churn through. You've also got an education process. So again, when you're looking at I'm thinking from an investor's perspective, and as we know, investors have a different level of risk. And there are investors for very early stage and obviously for later stage enterprises and opportunities. But again, you're talking about creating something that they're not going to understand, but should probably have a lot of interest and appetite for, based on what we discussed previously. And I know we haven't gone into depth there, but you know what I'm talking about. So again, it's an education of different sorts for different kinds of communities. Business support, you know, if you're going to start creating these you know, inspirational, innovational concepts, MVPs, you know, very quickly, it's going to require a different level of business support from people like the LEPs that are out there and other business support organisations. And investors, you know, you don't want to be behind the curve there. If you're creating these organisations, you want people ready, educated, and knowing that you know, these types of opportunities are going to be of appeal.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant point. It brings us actually very well onto, before we do the wrap up, onto an event that we're going to be running in January, which is one of the biggest fears, if we're to take that around no code as well. You know, you haven't written it all, it's not your IP. Does that erode the value of what you've built if you're investing in that, whether you're using it to run your organisation or whether you're actually building your business based on that piece of IP? So we're doing a myth busting session on IP and no code, because actually a huge number of no code businesses are getting a large amount of investment, and not just businesses that have built no code tools for other people to build, but businesses built on no code. Does that make sense? Because there's a difference between the two. And I think you're right, there is an education of different communities of people now. The investor community, so they don't miss the opportunities to back early these businesses that are building solutions to problems fast with no code. First mover advantage, right? How many times do we hear the first mover advantage? And if people can get there first and land the solution to the problem with that stakeholder group, whoever they're serving, fast, and they get that usage and adoption, actually that is more valuable these days than the IP itself. And if you look at how businesses are now valued in the tech space, they're valued based on usage, not necessarily how many lines of code somebody has built. And that's the story that we need to be telling, I think, to help people. So no, I think it's a really good point, Mel. So back to, you know, who do we need to educate to make sure we're not missing the opportunities to back early stage businesses and get that investment in? Thank you, Mel. So maybe just over to us all for got a few minutes each, just to what are the few things you're taking away from today's session that you're going to take back into either your organisations or conversations. Joanna, I wonder if we could start with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely be going back and, you know, looking at how we can incorporate no code further into our curriculum, and also make, you know, using it as a route into our training programs, as well as teaching our learners that you don't have to code everything from scratch. You know, you can bring in no code solutions and work more efficiently that way. You don't, just because you're a developer doesn't mean you have to create everything from scratch. You know, you're just creating work for yourself when there are solutions out there that you can use, and that can be a really worthwhile investment for your organization or for your employer. So I definitely think there's a few different routes that we can be approaching no code within TechUp.
Thank you, Joanna, that's brilliant to hear. And any support, give us a shout. Francis, thoughts from you?
So for me personally, first of all, thank you for having me. This has been like super inspirational. I think the point that really struck home with me is that a lot of industries don't know what they don't know. And so I'm going to try really hard and maybe start making content around those kind of like weird industries that no one would even think about using like Notion for, like connecting with people from those industries. Like, I don't know, like Notion for bakers, Notion for like e-commerce managers, Notion for nurses, Notion for mums, you know, and like start creating those content series. I don't know what the plural is, but yeah, hopefully that inspires more people to like think outside of the box about like how they could use no code or like Notion in general. So
we all respond better to messages that feel like they're talking to us. So I think that sounds perfect, trying to talk to groups that maybe are not being talked to. Frances, that's a brilliant idea. Thank you. Please share that with us and we will share it back out into the community when you do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mel.
Yeah, I think it's I've got a theme, and I think, you know, I think I'd really come back to kind of stressing for different communities those different messages. What I don't want is for, you know, the movement to go ahead and then to be educating, you know, the likes of SMEs. They just a lot don't know. I've spoken to some intermediaries over the last few weeks and tested this note. What do you know about no code? And there's still a lot of what code? So it for me, and I will happily, you know, if you've got information that can be pushed out there, I'll start sharing it, because I think by the time you get to that January meeting, it'd be really nice to get that level of education so people come with questions. You know, get that audience ready. I was smiling earlier because one of my other questions that I'd not asked was all around that kind of IP space. And I think it is a big concern. People get very nervous about it on both sides. So anything we can do to demystify and start, you know, answering that, I think is key. But I think it's been a hugely valuable session, and you know, it's certainly got my brain worrying about these things. I think there's a lot we can share between us out to our communities, see what comes back. Yeah.
Definitely, and you're right on the IP thing. There are some big agenda topics around this that we need to keep talking about at this level, and from that will come the stories that will then validate, you know, we said this, was that true? This is what happened, and I think that's what we're trying to do. So we'll try and surface some more of those investor type stories and IP stories in the next session, Mel, and maybe we'll get some SMEs into that so they can hear that in a bit more detail. Jen, just from you, really, what were the things you've taken away from this? And thank you, because I know you sort of came into this today last minute for us, so really appreciate it, by the way.
No, it was mostly Joanna's reminder that we're probably already using, you know, more technology, digital solutions than we actually realize. And so in trying to relate that to other people, to help them realize, I mean, I know somebody already said, well, we don't know what we don't know. At the same time, though, we may know a little bit more than we actually realize.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really, so, you know, we don't know what we don't know, but perhaps we all suffer from a bit of imposter syndrome and probably tell ourselves that we are not digital workers. But if you can write a complex or even simple query in Excel, you're probably more of a developer than you realize. And there's an awful lot of people there that are doing things every day in software and technology, and actually it's no more difficult than building in no code. I see people work in Salesforce adding a field or changing, adding a drop down into an option set within a simple form builder within an existing application. And do you know what? No code's no different. So I think sometimes we forget just how much skills we have in our organizations and people that are actually pseudo no coders today. So Jen, I think that's a really good point. You don't know what you don't know, but maybe we don't realize what we do know. So I think that's a wonderful point to end on. So thank you very much, everybody, for all of your contributions today. We will be writing this up. It has been recorded. We'll be making a summary of this. Like I said, there's a series of events that we're running throughout the year, trying to dig into some specific subjects. And like I said, the hero series will be no code builders talking about the things they've built, how they built it, why they built it. And I think that'll be really good for some of your SMEs as well now. Yeah. And we'll loop back in. So thank you to everyone who's joined and attended today. For your questions, for everybody that's participated remotely. Congratulations to everybody on the panel, and we'll leave it there. Have a fantastic week, everyone, and a super Christmas as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,